you mentioned early adopters and with everything you're saying about relationships, I mean, what it really makes me think about, you're right, is it's important to build relationships, but it's also important to build them in a way where you understand what those clients are capable of. So,
Mm.
for example, early adopters. I am not an early adopter. Like, I'm like, the whole Ocean Gate thing blows my mind. Like, that submarine would have had to exist for like 3 generations before, because I'm not that guy. I'm
Right, right,
not. I
right,
want
right,
to
right.
know 1,000 people have done it.
Yeah, yeah,
And Ocean Gate is a very,
yeah.
specific example, but
Yeah.
it's, I mean, like, I want there to be like 67,000 Amazon reviews before I buy the thing.
Hmm.
Um, I can't talk to my clients like they're me. I have to talk
Hmm.
to early adopters
Yeah.
like they're early adopters and
Hmm.
form that relationship. So, an example, a guy, a guy I've non-ironically said is my favorite client before many times. He's been with me for years. He's one of my most long-standing clients. And we have changed his life.
Hmm.
Here's a guy who has given me Google reviews and let me do this and done that. But, I say to him, who do you know that needs this?
Hmm.
And, his answer is kind of this, well, a lot of people, but I don't think any of them would follow through. And it
Hmm.
tells me that he's not comfortable being that sort of leader of, hey,
Yeah.
friend
Yeah.
group, you should do this. And it
Right.
has nothing to do with. Meanwhile, I have another client who's been with me for a while, and she's got torn muscles, like real, like full thickness tear in a rotator cuff. She's got some
Hmm.
stuff that we're working with, but I'm not going to stitch tendons back together, you know, by working on serratus anterior, right?
Right.
So there are times where I'm really proud of that work, but there are times like, man, I wish I could do more for this person.
Hmm.
She sent me like 2 people. This person, get in there. That person, get in there.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's just part of that developing the relationship is, I think, to speak of you in the beginning, like, I'm too expensive, I'm too, getting
Hmm.
out of your own mindset. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't pay for this because I'm in that time, right?
Yeah.
Young and starving and building up a new business. Of course I
Right.
wouldn't pay. But getting out of your own head and just going, all right, this person, I'm looking at this person, I'm listening to this person. Here's how we can form this relationship.
Right.
Here's what they're capable of doing.
Yeah. And, I mean, you mentioned like knowing thyself, right? Like when you know the type of person you are and you know the type of person you aren't. I think that really matters in how you look at marketing strategies too, right? So like I've definitely done my research on certain like marketing and entrepreneurial strategies and tried to follow what I could, but then you realize really quickly like what you're not comfortable with. And I think sometimes like right behind what you're not comfortable with might be, okay, I'm learning a lesson. As I get more comfortable with this, I get conditioned to it. It could be a really big thing. It could really enhance my business. But as you try it more and more, and there's a resistance to something that should be an important part of your business, like I think sometimes it's useful to try to find something that fits more with your personality too. And I like naturally what I found is that like when things like finances came up and even just like marketing asks to my client, the more I could take like a verbal conversation out of that and turn it into something that was maybe systematized on like a newsletter, systematized on even just like an online scheduling situation where, all right, you get an appointment. After the appointment is made, like there's an ask by not by me personally, but by like the system to say like, all right, if you want to leave a review, you can leave a review. And I've gotten some reviews that way. And then the same thing from a perspective of even just, getting people to, if I'm increasing my prices and things like that, just have it be, it's right on my website. Like I don't want to have like that direct conversation if I don't have to and just say, oh, no, I have everything right here. This is the link that you go to. If you have any questions, you ask me, but trying to make it like that I don't have to have those conversations. So I'm a professional for movement. I'm not the administrative side of things. I could hire someone to do that, but at this point, like I feel like it's easy to do that from a technology standpoint, that it sort of saves me on overhead, and I feel like it still kind of keeps me out of having to be that person having those conversations a lot. So that's what I found, like with everything that I was looking into, the most comfort I had was when I could take like software or technology and do that part of it for me. And then it became like I wasn't overthinking it. I just sort of could take some time to set up a system that did it as automatically as possible for me, and it got me out of my own way.
Yeah, that there's something to be said for streamlining
Mm-hmm.
and I mean in your case you're talking about technology but delegating certainly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um it's a fine line. It's a fine line between not wasting your time on things you're not good at, really
Mm-hmm.
don't need to be good at.
Right.
And because I've fallen into this trap before, though, too, of writing off things I should be doing as like, oh, that's just not how my brain works.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
like, no, dude, you do need to come up with a spreadsheet, put
Mm-hmm.
in all your expenses, put in everything that's brought. Like, you do need to sit with those numbers. You do
Yeah.
need to itemize. You do need to do that. Uh, yeah, it's tricky. And that's all part of the game again of like learning how to be the entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I right now I'm in a situation where I was getting some guidance in marketing. Um, that was don't spend a dime and do social media because it's free.
Mm-hmm.
And what I ended up doing was like spending these inordinate amount of time. And I'm not judging anyone else, and I'm not saying what anyone should do.
Mm-hmm.
I hate social media. I hate Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And I always have. That has not been a reaction. No, 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 no. I always have. But I
Mm-hmm.
found myself doing this like, well, don't spend any money. It's something you can technically accomplish. So you ought to do it in house. Like, why am I? My job is to get people stronger and healthier. And like,
Mm-hmm.
why am I spending all this time worrying about like what content, what should my post be? Does it look, you know, that is also a trap. That is
Yeah.
also a trap.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
It's
think that the social media thing is like, I think for businesses like we have, it's what we feel confident in is that we can educate, right? Like more than just get people strong. Well, how are we getting people strong? We're getting them strong through our knowledge and education, right? So I think what can like I think what could switch the gears a little bit on like social media is if you just look at it as whatever platform you use, it's an education platform that can be built gradually over time. And then it's sort of like, all right, yeah, you could be patient with that because you're doing something you would enjoy doing anyway, right? Like you're educating the people that you're educating every day. You could just take that lesson and maybe put it on video or something like that. And I think that the difficult part for me is to sort of take that concept of education and then say like, all right, when is it that I need to like really up the production value of all this stuff? You know what I mean? As you start to see peers or people like who that you trust and you really respect what they're saying, but there's like, okay, that video looks a lot better than mine. I think that's where it's like, when do I spend the money on doing that? But I think that the getting started part is, connected to the thing that you love anyway, which is likely educating people. And I think it can become a process that takes as long as it needs to take, right? And it never has to be like, again, this mode of like I'm purposely trying to pull people in directly, but it's sort of like something that builds, a little bit more organically and gradually over time. I think the YouTube works well for that. Like the quicker hitters like Instagram, maybe not as much because we see so much of the, kind of the clickbait right before your eyes, and you're like, all right, how do I look more like that? But I think YouTube, you could kind of expand out the narrative a little bit, like what you're talking about, the educational component a little bit more.
Yeah, I definitely like the idea of YouTube. I think if I were to try and pinpoint my voice, it
Hmm.
probably is medium or longer form content
Hmm.
than it is quick quip.
Right.
My favorite, like the Instagram accounts I really like are one quick video and then like you're on your phone like scroll.
Yeah.
There's a long comment. Like those are my favorite guys,
Yeah.
for that reason.
Yeah.
Um, I yeah, I just I think you're right about that in insofar as um I think too much of the expectation with Instagram is a quick hit of something. Like
Mm.
I don't think people I think if you really drill down and really get to the heart of why people are on Instagram, like no one is going to Instagram for education.
Mm.
Even and this is a guy who hates social media, so this is very biased. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
But what I'll say of myself is even when I open up the Instagram account, it's
Mhm.
like you got like three scrolls, like one, two, three. If one of those three is an interesting exercise, or I'm kind of joking, but I'm not.
Mhm.
Shitting on Squat University, like, that kind of stuff will catch my attention.
Yeah.
But like it's one, two, three. Nope, none of them. I'm
Yeah.
moving on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's sort of like eye candy for getting people to look deeper into you. Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's a tendency to look at some of the people who have the most followings and try to be that, even though you're nowhere near that. Like that wouldn't be like the avenue to go. But like if you're gonna take a class that talks about like how to get more following within Instagram, they're gonna tell you to do what the people who have the most following do, which is rarely like from our niche, like the people that even like are very successful that we follow they probably don't follow the things that the most successful people, on Instagram follow, like in the fitness industry, which is a lot of times just stuff that we have probably very little respect for. So I think it's again, it's with taking judgment out of it. It's just if you find the people that are really within your niche that you respect from a sort of like a ground level education standpoint and pay attention to what they do, right? Like, and you'll find that maybe they don't have nearly as much of a following as you would think, even though you find them, quite, intriguing and they're popular, but they're popular within our niche as opposed to popular globally or nationally and things like that. I think that helps you, or certainly helps me like get a sense of where I am and like the comfort level of the progression in which I'm moving forward. If I start comparing myself to like, like fitness people that are just have like, hundreds of thousands of followers, but they're not educators. They're sort of like models or, like kind of clickbait people, then that's going to start to mess with my whole line of thinking about like what I want to do with the progression of my business. Right. And I think that's where Instagram or social media could really mess with you that way. Because it sort of like totally takes you out of your niche and because you start to see what looks like your niche, but it's like actually nowhere near your niche, being really popular. And I think like there's certain words that sort of get thrown around as being the same thing, but it's like we have to categorize better to find again a niche or a like the specific thing that would actually be less frustrating to watch. So like if you're looking at the word fitness, a lot of times that's going to get lumped in with people are doing like one-on-one movement coaching, personal training, right? Like have a background that might be somewhat medical, and it's going to get lumped in with gym culture, which, for the most part, like in my one-on-one setting here, it's like there's nothing, it looks nothing like gym coach culture because you don't have to like negotiate with the other people that are trying to use different equipment. It's a one-on-one scenario. Like every now and then I'll have another trainer in here with a client. That's as much negotiation that anyone has to do with sort of the other people in the gym. Right. So that's a completely different scenario. So like, and I've realized this personally recently where I just got a gym membership at the Y because I wanted to play basketball and do like some of the sauna and cryo stuff. And I realized like I haven't had a gym membership in a busy gym like that in years, right? And it's such a different thing that you just have to like take in and respond to other people. but that starts to come out into some of the Instagram things that will resonate with people that are doing that, which would be very different than like having a gym that you actually pay for, but it's not a gym that's a public gym, right? So I think like things like athletics and fitness too also get like grouped together, but are completely different when you talk about like a niche. So like if you're working with high level athletes, it's like very not related to working with the general population. But a lot of times like the education that we get, what we might follow and the people that are being targeted with the conversations or the education that is in those, social media posts, it'll have nothing to do with the clientele that I'm working with. And that's something that I've really had to like kind of do a deep dive on what is my niche of the clients that I see, but then what is the niche of maybe the people in the public in the virtual space that I actually want to educate. And I'm finding that it's actually two totally different audiences, right? The clients that I see tend to be at least over 50, if not over 60, on a regular basis, and they live close to where I am. And then online, it's more of people that are like my age, right? That are maybe some professionals that are a little bit younger, but a lot of times it's people that are my age that want to, like try to be healthy as they're in their 40s and older, right? Which is I see almost zero people like that on a regular basis in my clinic. So just like kind of looking at that as, and that's very different than if I was working with like or trying to talk to the highest of high athletes, right? Like I really don't feel like I can say much there because I don't work with athletes like that. But I think a lot of times it all gets grouped together in the same idea of what fitness is and what athletics is, and then that's where it becomes like it's hard to find your niche.